Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 12 o'clock on a Sunday, which means it's time for a Q&A. Now, this is still being filmed here in Blackpool. We're heading back home today, but I might not have time to film the Q&A. This is Thursday. I might not have time to film it. So if I don't film it now, it ain't going to get done. So very sorry, but hopefully things will be going back to normal very, very shortly. Anyway, if you've never tuned into a Q&A before, this is where I take all your questions that you've asked over the course of the week, and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. Now, typically as a rule, I answer the questions, I film the Q&A on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So to guarantee that I answer your question, please try and get the question into me by sort of Wednesday morning at the latest. Now, just leave it as a comment down below on this video and I'll get to it next week. If I miss it, occasionally I do, I'm very sorry. Just ask it again and I'll get to it next week. Anyway, I don't look at these questions ahead of time. It's kind of a spontaneous thing because I think that's the best approach to get the sort of the best answers out of me when it comes to any of these questions. But if I see a particularly good question, I normally use that as the basis of a future video. Anyway, without further ado, I've got a whole bunch of questions this week, so we're going to get straight into it. Let's get into this week's Q&A. So the first question is from the Fess, and the Fess says, "Hey Craig, how's it going?" Very well, thank you, buddy. Been keeping up with your content daily, but it's been a while since I last asked a question, so I have one today. Firstly, do you believe the trick of the year for 2021, Cube in Bottle, has been topped yet? I feel the tricks this year have been good, but not enough to dethrone Cube in Bottle yet. That's a great question. I mean, that's a really good question. For me, Cube in Bottle is one of the best tricks that I've ever bought. I mean, I do it at every single wedding gig. It's given away to every single bride and groom. I do it a lot on stage. I mean, look at Ryland. He went on Britain's Got Talent at the beginning of 2022. We went and did the auditions. And in the auditions, we chose to open up his act with Cube in Bottle. I mean, that should tell you everything that I think about it as a prop. I think it's absolutely amazing. However, there are people out there that it's not going to be appropriate for. I mean, there are negatives, there are disadvantages. I don't see any disadvantages in it, but it is an expensive trick. I think the power of the Cube in Bottle comes from giving it away to somebody. And it's like £15 a bottle, so it's not a cheap thing to do if you're going to give it away. And if you don't give it away, I think it's not as good as if you do give it away, if you know what I mean. So there's negatives, there's pros and there's cons. For me, I mean, I gave it Trick of the Year in 2021 for that very reason, and I wouldn't go and do a close-up job without having Cube in Bottle with me. Same for Ryland, you know, we both do it all the time. We wholesale these things in from Henry. We're getting through them all of the time. But I know that there's some people out there that don't do Cube in Bottle. For me, it's the perfect cube trick because you don't even need to know how to solve a cube, you know, it's just brilliant. Anyway, and the other thing it does is it gives cube magic a finale. A lot of the time there's not a finale to cube magic. There's a couple of different exceptions like Clear Cube by Prop Dog and The Solution by Michael Murray, but this for me is a definite finale to a cube routine, which is really cool. Has it been superseded in 2022? That's an amazing question. I mean, there's been some really good magic come out in 2022. Is it as good as the Cube in Bottle? Subjective, I suppose. I mean, I'm biased, but I think that the Quantum deck was really good. I mean, I do that in every single gig, and it's, you know, very, very versatile. I do it on stage, I do it close up. I also think that the Mirage coin set was very, very well received. I think we're on run number 4 from Alakazam now. They can't keep it in stock long enough. But, you know, there's a bunch of other stuff that's come out. I think that... and I know this is a hotbed. I know that people are going to disagree with me, and there's going to be angry people in the comments to this video going, "Oh, you're just saying that because you're Lloyd Barnes' friend." But I think that Lux, for me, is as good as Cube in Bottle. And I know there's people out there that go, "Oh, Lux, you know, Craig Petty's an idiot for calling it Trick of the Decade, blah, 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 blah." That's what I think. And I think that based on working with it for months before the review went out. And I have continued to work with it for months since the review. I would not go anywhere without Lux. I've bought 4 of them. Ryland's got one in his keychain as part of his EDC. He's got one in his close-up case. I've got 2. Like, I love Lux. I love Lux. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Just the moment where the X jumps from one hand to the other and back again, just an incredibly strong piece of magic. And if I was ever in a situation where I was going on TV or Ryland was going on TV again, I think I'd use Lux because I think it just looks incredible. I think it's as good. Is it as powerful a moment as Cube and Bottle when you give that bottle away? No. However, I think it's as strong in many ways. And I spoke to Matt the other day. I do the Matt test, and Matt loves magic. He sees a lot of magic, and he actually turned around to me and he said that the best trick he's ever seen on the Matt test is Lux. And I have people screaming when I do Lux. So I don't know. I think that Lux might hold that title. I think Lux might be the trick that's probably as good. It's definitely the one for me that's in the top spot at the moment when it comes to trick of the year for 2022. It's debatable whether it's as good as the Cube in Bottle. I think that I could have an argument to say it's better, and I could have an argument to say it's not as good as. But I think Lux is the one to beat. Having said that, I am privy to a few things that are coming out this year that I think could also be in the running. And I think there's other stuff that's been in the running. It's very subjective, isn't it, when it comes to reviewing magic. Imagine by Bernardis is something that I've been doing in my show now for a very, very long time. I think that's just incredible. The new colour match, which I still haven't reviewed on the channel, but I will do. Everybody knows I love the new colour match because a lot of my routines were on the project. And then, lots of stuff that's come out through Penguin Magic that's absolutely brilliant as well. I don't know. I'm going to give it Lux. Right now, I'm going to say that I'm going to give it Lux for the trick that's currently in the forefront for Trick of the Year. And you know what? Anybody out there that wants to make angry comments down below, go for your life. This is just my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. But I've got hundreds of performances under my belt that proves that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. It gets really good reactions. Okay, there's one more question from the fest, and he says, secondly, have you tried ECC by N2G, and what are your thoughts? Well, I've got one coming. As soon as it comes, I will review it. I looked at it, and based on the trailer, it looks a little bit like Explosion by Dean Dill. It looks like there's elements in there of Translocation by John Kennedy. It looks like there's some coin assembly stuff there, but it looks like a big part of it is Explosion by Dean Dill. And if that's the case, I really hope that they have credited him because Explosion was always very, very exclusive. I have an Explosion set. And, Matt Wright used it brilliantly in his competition act. Explosion's amazing. Just a really good piece. Really, really good piece. And the problem with N2G is a lot of the time they don't credit anything, mainly because their tutorials are so terrible. So I really hope that they do credit Dean Dill, but we'll see. I've got it on its way. It'll be heading into a review show fairly soon. Okay, so the next question is from my friend Sean Goff over in Ireland. And Sean says, "Hi Craig, my question for this week is a bit random, and you probably can't help with this, but I'll try anyway. Have you or any of your magician friends ever been to San Francisco? And if so, are there any magic-related shops or shows that you'd recommend going to? I'm going on holiday there next week. Thanks for all the amazing content." San Francisco is one of my favourite places in the whole of the world. I've been there a few times. The last time I went there was many, many years ago. And if anybody remembers that volcanic ash cloud that happened, me and Sarah are over there when the ash cloud happened. And we ended up getting stuck in San Francisco. We booked a 2-week stay. And the ash cloud hit like a day or two before the end of the holiday. And it meant that we couldn't fly back. And we were stuck there for another, we ended up being stuck in America for 3 weeks. So we were ending up being over there for 5 weeks, which really, and it was over Easter. So it was a real nightmare for Sarah because she was a teacher at the time and she was having to go back to school, and she couldn't, and I had gigs, and I had to cancel them. We were just literally stuck over there. But the thing is, we'd budgeted for this. We booked this hotel, we'd booked the flights, we booked everything, and the hotel had no more rooms, and we budgeted for this 2-week stay. So we were kind of eating into our savings at the time, and we ended up going from this really nice hotel we'd been staying in for 2 weeks to a travel lodge by the airport, so we could go to the airport every day. And when we could tell that nothing was happening, we caught an internal flight to Boston because Sarah's got family in Boston, and we just stayed with her family in Boston until the ash cloud went away, and then we caught a flight back. But yeah, so yes, I have been to San Francisco. It's absolutely amazing. So first of all, Misdirection's Magic Shop is there. Misdirection's Magic Shop is an incredible magic shop. It's really good, and it's right there. So if you're going to San Francisco, you should absolutely go to the Misdirection's Magic Shop. And as I say, it's been many years since I've been there, but we caught a bus over there. There's a bus that goes directly there. If you contact Misdirections, they'll tell you which bus to catch. But we caught a bus, and the bus dropped us off right there. And I remember it being near a park from memory. But Misdirections, absolutely great magic shop, really good, really friendly guy that runs the place as well. Now, the other thing that we did when we were over there is we Googled magic shows in San Francisco. While we were there, we just Googled magic shows in San Francisco, and we found a lovely little theatre that had a close-up show. It was a really small room. I don't know if it's still running, but there were like maybe 20 or 30 people in this room, 30 or 40 people. And it was just a close-up show done in a little theatre, and there were 2 performers. That was really cool. We went to see that. And we also found a couple of restaurants where there was close-up magic going around in the restaurant. So we went to those restaurants and watched the close-up magic as well. So one of the things that I'd advise you to do is when you get there, Google like magic in San Francisco, especially the Bay Area, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff going on. And is it Pier 49 or Pier 59? I can't remember which one it is. It's been a while since I've gone there, but go to that pier because there's a lot going on there as well. So basically, yes, there's a lot going on in San Francisco. Might take a little bit of research because there's always different things going on. But one thing I definitely do is go to Misdirections. It's a really cool magic shop, and you can go from the center of San Francisco, catch one bus, and you can get there relatively easily. Also, actually, one other point is when we were over in San Francisco, we went up to Sacramento. We went up to Murphy's Warehouse because Sacramento is only like a 2 or 3 hour train journey. So what we did is we caught a train up to Sacramento, booked a hotel overnight in Sacramento, and we went and hung out with the guys in Murphy's. Now, maybe, if you reach out to Bo Kramer, and because Bo is kind of the social media guy at Murphy's, so if you message Murphy's on Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook or anywhere like that, you're going to get to Bo. Maybe if you speak to Bo and you say, hey, I'm coming to San Francisco, if I catch a train up to Sacramento, would you, could I come and meet the guys at Murphy's? Could I have a tour around the warehouse? They might say yes, they might say no, but there's no harm in asking. So that's another thing that you could do. But if you're stuck in San Francisco, then definitely go check out Misdirections. Okay, so the next question is from Hyperpencil. And Hyperpencil says, what are some good tricks for stage magic? And how can I change a trick meant for close-up and make it good for stage? Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Like an awful lot to unpack there, but let's see if we can kind of give this a go. So let's take the second part of the question first. How can you take a trick that's good for close-up and put it on stage? And the answer is, it depends on several factors. So the first thing it depends on is the size of the stage. So for example, I've seen some guys do tricks like French Kiss and Ambitious Card on stage. And if you're working a small stage, you can get away with that. So for example, I've just spent the last 8 nights at the House of Secrets in Blackpool. It's a very small stage in a very small room. And I was doing multiple selection in there, which is primarily a close-up trick, but I was doing it on stage because in a small room, it was working absolutely fine. And it was better than doing stuff with bigger props. So that was fine. And I've seen magicians that are close-up guys that go on stage and they do stuff like French kiss and ambitious card, and in a small room, that's fine. But the problem is, if you're going to go on a theatre, or if you're going to go on a bigger stage, or if you're going to go on like a stage with a decent size audience, I'm talking like 100 plus, then those tricks are going to struggle. Like I'm talking, they're going to really struggle, because you've got to connect with the people in the audience, right? And if you're doing an ambitious card, which is based on the card coming to the top of the deck, unless you've got projection and you've got like close-up cameras that are projecting your performance up onto a big screen, people aren't going to be able to see what you're doing. If people can't see what you're doing, then all of a sudden they're going to lose interest. And once they've lost interest in the audience, you're dead in the water. Now, there are ways to get around that, but generally as a rule, if you're working a big room, you're going to need to adapt what you're doing. You're going to need to take what you're doing and you need to level it up, right? That's vitally, vitally, vitally important. Now, I say that there's ways around this. There are ways around this. So as I say, the first thing is projection. So if you're in a big room with a big theatre and you've got a TV there and they've got a camera and you can project your performance onto a screen, then that's not too much of a problem, right? Then that's going to work absolutely fine. The other thing that you can do is you can pick routines and you can pick effects that will actually work for a big audience, So earlier on, I mentioned multiple selection. Multiple selection is a routine that will work for a big audience in a fairly big room. But what you have to do is, if you're doing this, you have to make sure that, like for example, we used ambitious card as an example. A card jumping to the top of the deck is not going to work because they're not going to be seeing the signature, right? So, which is kind of what sells it. Ambitious card is sold by the card being signed. You could do a predicted card routine where you've got a card in so the perfect trick example is ID by Steve Cook. If you don't know ID by Steve Cook, it's you bring out a wallet, and the wallet's here in your hand from the very beginning. You have someone name a card, you open up the wallet, you take out the card, and it's the card that they named. Very strong routine. Invisible deck is another example. You know, you have somebody pick a card, and it's the only card that's turned over in the deck. Perfect example. Both of those would play to a big audience as long as you have somebody up on stage with you, because they will react to that revelation. So if they name a card and then you take a card out of the wallet and you turn it around and it's their card, you can play off them, and that's what's going to give the audience the kind of cue to react. So if you just stand on stage and you say, and you're in a massive room, and you say to somebody 10 rows back, name a card, 7 of diamonds, boom, look, there's the 7 of diamonds. It might not be that impressive, right? Because they might not be able to see what's going on. But if you bring them up on stage and you have them involved in the routine, and then you have them name a card and you go, look, I'm just going to show this to you. If that's your card, you're going to say, yes, that's my card. And they're going to give you a big round of applause. Is that the card? Yes, it is. There's the 7 of diamonds. Like one of the routines that I do in my cabaret that I've done for audiences of up to 1,000 people is John Allen's Destination Box, where in essence, a signed card vanishes and appears in a locked box that the audience have been holding on to the whole time. And the finale of the routine is opening up the box and showing that there's a signed card in there. Now, they can't see that signature, a lot of people in a big audience, but the reason that works is because I've got a person on stage with me. They've signed the card on stage. I show them the card. I have them confirm that's their card. You know, it's kind of like, have a look at this card. If that's your card with your signature on, you're going to turn it around. You're going to say, that's my card. Every single person here is going to give you a big round of applause. Is that the card? Yes, it is. Give it up for so on and so forth, right? So you can have signed cards on there, but it's nice to have an audience member on stage with you to facilitate that. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, in terms of another point to consider is looking at how you can adapt routines to work on stage. So Cody Fisher has a routine that he's published called Killer Prediction. And by the way, if you're serious about going on stage, go and get yourself Killer Prediction. It's the best 30 quid you'll spend. You have to buy about £20 worth of props, but it is a way of taking an invisible deck and making it play to the biggest audience. And it's a masterclass in how to make something like the invisible deck play to a big audience. So briefly, what happens is you have three pieces of paper, three balled up colored pieces of paper, and you throw a piece of paper out to a member of the audience. They stand up, they name a suit, you have somebody else catch one and they name a value, you have somebody else catch one, they name something else. At the beginning, you gave a deck of cards out, and then you have all three people that are holding the pieces of paper come up on stage, and you take the cards back, and between these three people, they've made this playing card, and then you spread through the deck, and the only card turned over in the deck is the card. Now, already at that point, the routine is playing bigger, because you've got three people on stage, you're throwing things into the audience, you're having them stand up, so on and so forth. But then when they unfold the pieces of paper and you get them to hold them out in front of them, the pieces of paper have printed on them the name of the card that they named. So it'd be like Queen of Diamonds. And it's a beautiful routine for stage. I've done it for many, many years. But more importantly, what it does is it shows you how you can take a close-up trick and you can make it work to a big audience, right? Which is something that you really need to do. And that was the other part of your question, actually, wasn't it? How do you make a close-up trick work for stage? Well, that's a masterclass in how to do that. You have to think about how to make it play bigger. And you have to, as I say, you have to factor in the size of the room, you have to factor in the size of the audience, and then you have to factor in what particular routines will work and what particular routines won't work. So, for example, a coins across, if you're just doing like David Roth's Wing Silver to 1,000 people, that might not work. But if you were doing a routine like I can never remember the name of this, Competero or something like that. I can't remember. I'm butchering it. But it's the whole idea of having a little shot glass with a pint glass over the top, and you have 4 coins and you throw them and they land in the glass and you see them land. Well, that's something that will play to a really big audience, right? And something that Ryland does in his stage show. So again, it's a perfect example of, taking a coin trick and layering it and staging it differently so it works on stage, right? Now, in terms of, however, what I would say is look for routines that work in a close-up environment, but also work on stage. Because one of the things that you'll find when you're putting a stage show together is you're going to be very, very nervous. And I always find that the best routines to put into your act initially are the ones where you've worked it in a close-up environment. Because if you've managed to work them in a close-up environment, it means that you can work them in a less nerve-wracking situation. It's way less nerve-wracking doing a trick to 6 people close-up than it is to walk out on stage in front of 500, 1,000, 2,000 people and do the routine in front of 2,000 people. Again, using a couple of examples from Ryland's show. Ryland does the cubes. He does a full cube routine in his stage show, but he does cubes in close-up. So he's able to practice stuff in close-up and then take it on stage. Cube and bottle, which he did in his auditions on Britain's Got Talent. He'd been doing that for years in a close-up situation. So he was very comfortable doing it on stage, even though it was staged and framed differently. Same with Venom Cube in the semi-final and the toss-up solve and all stuff like this. So look at routines that work on close-up that also work on stage. So in Ryland's current show, he's doing the egg bag. Now, the egg bag is a perfect example of a routine that will work really well close-up, but will also play to the biggest audience. And if you don't think it will, go speak to Jeff Hobson. It'll play to the biggest audience. So think of routines that you can do, or routines that you can actually adapt and make bigger. So a perfect example, if you do the close-up linking rings, like the ninja rings or Matthew Garrett stuff, well, it's not a big, massive creative leap to then get yourself a set of 12-inch or 15-inch or 10-inch rings and do the same routine, but now the props are bigger, so it's going to play to a bigger audience, right? Does that make sense? And I really would consider having routines that pack small and play big. Routines that pack small and play big are really, really useful for this sort of thing, because the best way to get good at stage is by doing a little bit of stage at every close-up gig you do. So saying to somebody who books you for close-up, hey, at the end, when I've finished, if you want to, I can do a 10-minute spot for everybody at the end of the night. Would that be okay? Would you like me to do that? And just offering it to them for free. And at the end of the night, do a 10-minute spot and work in a different trick every single night. And before you know it, you can have a stage act. So, that's a good piece of advice. I put a video together on how to perform on stage. It's worth looking at that. And I can do other videos on this. That's not a problem. Good tricks for stage magic. I mean, it's really subjective. There's millions of them. There's absolutely millions of tricks that you can perform on stage that will work really well. And really, it's just subjective. It's down to the individual. Try to think outside the box a little bit. Try not to do the same thing as everybody else. Try to put an act together that's unique and that's different. But realistically, you can do anything on stage. Chop Cup will work on stage for hundreds of people. Just look at Paul Daniels' act. So you don't have to go and buy stage tricks specifically. You can take your close-up stuff, as we've talked about, and you can make it work on stage. I mean, my stage act is, very, very different. It works absolutely fine. I've got lots of different routines that I do on stage. And what works for me might not work for you. What works for Ryland might not work for you. But have a look at your character. I know I talk about this an awful lot, but have a look at your character. And again, and I'm using Ryland as an example because we've recently just put a stage show together for him, so I can use him as a frame of reference. When we were putting Ryland's act together, it was really important that every routine that we did was about him being a kid. So, because that's important, because when you're a 9-year-old performing on stage, you kind of have to lean into that. It wouldn't make any sense having him doing gambling themed routines or anything like that. He's 9, right? So we had to lean into that quite heavily. And that's his character. His character is he's 9 years old. So what would a 9-year-old do? And I'm not talking about doing kiddie magic. The stuff he does is for adults, but it's routines that you'd see a kid do. So the Rubik's Cubes are perfect. He does a version of Icon ESP completely differently using superheroes, Lego superheroes. He does Milking Light Bulb. He does the Vanishing Stool Illusion. He does Extreme Hanky. All stuff like this that if you're a kid, you would see, that the presentations make sense, right? So think about your character and think about who you are, the type of magic that you do, and don't just rush in and buy something. Have a look at the reviews first. There's millions of tricks out there. I mean, if you want me to do a 10 best stage routines of all time, let me know in the comments. I can do that for you. But this is not the right time and place to suggest specific stage routines. Instead, think of your character, have a look round, and think of the type of venues you're going to perform in. Because I could suggest to you getting a split press from Guy Barrett, but unless you're performing big stages, it ain't going to get used. Okay? So hopefully that helps. Okay, so the next question is from Vinavest, and Vinavest says, "Hi Craig, are you going to review Anverdi's colour match?" Yes, I am. I'm so sorry I haven't reviewed it yet. It's been a manic few weeks. I want to do a proper review show special on it, and I probably will do in the next week or so. But I wanted to, spend some time on it because it's really, I really like colour match, and spoiler alert, it's going to get a great review. I'm using it all the time. I think it's great. I had the Pro Mystic one. I have the Anverdi one. I've switched to Anverdi. And there's several reasons why I've done that, which I can go through. And if you've watched the Colour Match project, you'll know that there's several routines that I actually suggested for inclusion on that project. So, it's something I've been playing with for a very, very long time. But yes, I will be reviewing it, and a review will come soon. Okay, so the next question is from Pierre G. And Pierre says, "Hi Craig, I enjoy your videos a lot." Thank you, Pierre. "I have a question. I have 3 kids, age 7 and below. What is your position on when to teach them to do magic? Too early and they lose the awe and wonder for magic, but too late might be too late. How do you approach teaching your kids whilst keeping them in awe of the magic? I thank you." It's kind of an interesting question, really, isn't it, Pierre? I didn't really have a concern, but I mean, I've got two kids, so I've got Ryland and Thea. Thea is not interested in performing magic at all. She can do a couple of simple tricks. She can do a sponge ball vanish very, very well, dice explosion, jumping rubber band and stuff like that. But right from the very beginning, she was not really interested in performing. However, she loves watching magic. Like, she goes to all the conventions with us. We've just been to Blackpool for 8 days. She's watched Ryland's show every single night, and then we watched Russ Brown's show. So she loves watching magic, and also she knows how a lot of this stuff's done because she's around magic 24/7. It's a bit like when you have a wife and you show your wife magic constantly. The wife will pick up on how the tricks work. Thea has that with me and Ryland. So she knows how a lot of this stuff works. So she can be very critical about it when she wants to be, even though she's only 7. But she has no interest in performing. Ryland, however, obviously has an interest in magic. And I didn't have a concern about having them lose the awe and wonder for magic. Just because, for me, it's as wonderous learning how to do magic as it is watching it. I don't think, and I had this. I remember on the channel, maybe in the early days of the channel, and me and Ryland were doing a review show, and he was very young. He was like 7. I remember somebody commenting a few times and saying, "Oh, you're a terrible father because." You've robbed your child of his innocence. He doesn't believe in magic now because of your actions. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I never had that concern because for me, there's a million. Without being too deep about it, there's a million things that we can be that are awe-inspiring in the world, not just magic. And I don't think teaching Ryland how to do magic was. Robbing him of his wonder of magic at all. What I did do when I started teaching him magic is I started teaching him, correctly. And what I mean by that is I taught him the art of magic. And hopefully you can see that when you watch Ryland perform and you watch him, talk about magic. He has a deep respect for it, and he finds it just as wondrous. He'll go and watch somebody's show. Last night we went and watched Russ Brown's show, and he was on the edge of his seat, absolutely loving every second of it. He wasn't, he goes and watches a gala show at Blackpool or something like that. He's on the edge of his seat. He doesn't think, "Oh, well, this is rubbish because I know how magic works." That's not, and I think that's because of what I ingrained in him from the early ages. But from my point of view, the most important thing for me was not forcing magic onto Ryland. I said to Sarah, my wife, I said, if he wants to learn magic, that's fine, but he's got to want to show an interest in it. I'm not going to force him how to do magic. I've talked about this on the channel before. My dad used to force me to do the stuff that he was into, and it bored me to tears and then some. So, instead, I focused on making sure he wanted to see magic, and he wanted to learn magic, and from a very early age he did. And the first thing I taught him was how to make a coin disappear, and I've got videos of him making a coin disappear at the age of 2, really, really well. He could bet. I mean, the coin, a $50, was almost as big as his entire hand, but he was making this coin disappear at the age of 2. He could make a coin disappear before he could even really speak properly. And it's just carried on from there. He's just always been obsessed with magic. In terms of teaching your kids magic, I don't think that there's a time frame at this, at least from my point of view. I think you just teach them when they want to learn. And, if they want to learn, teach it to them. But I think the key thing is don't force it down their throats. Don't make them want to perform magic. It's the same with Ryland. We spend a lot of time showing magic to each other, and it's magic, magic, magic around this house. But I don't force him to do it. I don't get into a situation where I go, right, okay, no, that never happens. He knows that if he wants to do magic, then he has to come to me. That's just the way it is, and that's always worked the best. So I think the key thing is get them into a point where they want to learn magic, and if they don't want to learn it, that's fair enough. Don't teach it them. But if you kind of force it down their throat, they're just going to rebel at some point down the line. In terms of the tricks to teach them, I mean, you can't go wrong with Marvin's magic set. You can't go wrong with, an early magic set, because a lot of the things in there, you're going to give the kids are going to. They're fun to practice. A lot of the stuff that are in the Marvin's magic sets and things like that, they're fun to practice, and they give the kids instant gratification. And what I mean by that is, if you're teaching them a really complicated card routine, it's going to take them hours and hours and hours to learn it before they can perform it, right? But if you teach them how to pluck a light from the air and put it in their hand and make it disappear and then pull it out from underneath their chin, well, that's something they're going to be able to do very, very easily, very, very quickly, and it's going to fill them with glee, and it looks amazing, and they can show everybody. And part of the thing with teaching kids magic, part of the thing with teaching anyone magic, is getting them hooked. And the thing that gets people hooked a lot of the time is seeing the reactions that other people have, and wanting that reaction more and more and more. And so the tricks that are easy to learn, but visual, like dynamic coins, like flying eagles, like delights, stuff like that will give them instant gratification. And then over time, you can teach them more complicated stuff and more complicated stuff and more complicated stuff until you get to the point where they can learn pretty much anything. So yeah, I'd start simple. I'd get yourself a Marvin's magic set or something like that, and I'd go down that route. That's the route that I'd go down. But make it a fun experience. Make learning magic a fun experience. I can't stress how important that is. Make learning magic a really fun experience for you and also for the kid that you're teaching. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so the next question is from Aaron 2009, and Aaron says, why doesn't your friend Lloyd Barnes like criticism? I heard he gets mad and blocks people even after they spend money on his products. Well, I don't know if we're talking about the same Lloyd Barnes, but if we're talking about the Lloyd Barnes I know, he spends hours and hours and hours helping magicians. And if you ever see him at a convention, he'll be the guy sessioning with people that are brand new into magic. He has a deep love and respect for the art. He has a deep love and respect for magic, and he has a deep love and respect for anybody in magic. And you say that you've heard that he doesn't like criticism and that he gets mad. Not that I'm aware of. Every single time I've seen him take criticism, he absolutely takes it on the chin and then some. In terms of, but you say that you've heard this. This hasn't happened to you. You just said, why doesn't your friend Lloyd like criticism? I heard he gets mad. So is this like Chinese whispers, or is this like, what is this? Where have you heard this from? Because unfortunately, there's a lot of bitter and twisted people in magic that might be annoyed for one reason or another and just spread lies. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case, but why are you saying this when this hasn't actually happened to you yourself? And blocks people after they spend money on his products? Well, here's the thing, right? I can't speak to Lloyd. I don't know if he's ever blocked anybody or not. But I'll tell you right now, if you're an arse to me on my YouTube channel, I'll block you 100%. Even if you've bought my products, I'll block you. If you're an arse to me on this YouTube channel, I would block you. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I spend hours and hours and hours creating this content for free to put on YouTube to try and help magicians. I'm here away in Blackpool at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm filming a video to try and help people. And I've had it in the past where I've had people come on and they've insulted me. They've insulted my family. They've insulted my children. They've insulted my wife. They've been really, really horrible to me. I don't care whether you've bought my trick or not. I'm not going to sit here and have you call me names and have you be an arse to me. I haven't got time for that negativity in my life. Back in the early days of this channel, I would sit here and argue, and I would spend 40 minutes creating a video ranting about how it's ridiculous that you said this about me, and I can't believe you'd say this about me. I haven't got time for that crap anymore. Do you know what I do instead? I'll just block your ass. Because if you hate me so much that you come onto my channel or you come onto my social media and you decide to call me a fat idiot or whatever it may be, yeah, you're getting your ass blocked. I'm sorry. I will spend hours helping customers, 100%. I will spend hours helping anybody who wants help, 150%. But I'm telling you right now, if you cross that line and you start to, slag me off for whatever reason, I just don't need that negativity in my life. I don't want to spend hours worrying about it like I did in the old days. It's easier to just block and move on. And if you don't like the fact that I've blocked you, I don't care, because I don't want to spend time and energy and effort replying to trolls. Now, I'm not saying you're a troll, but I'm just telling you this from my point of view. I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours replying to trolls and people whose intention to hurt my feelings. I'd rather just block and move on. It's easier for you, it's easier for me. So, yes, I've blocked people that have bought my products. It's got nothing to do about whether they've bought my products or not. It's got nothing to do with that. But if you slag me off, why the hell should I sit here and listen to you? Now, I don't know if that's Lloyd's approach. I imagine it would be, but I don't know. But again, you're talking about this almost like third hand. I've heard he blocks people after they spend money on his products. Why don't you speak to Lloyd about this? Why don't you email Lloyd? Why don't you message Lloyd on Messenger or something? And why don't you say to him, hey Lloyd, why come on a Q&A and ask me when it's nothing to do with me? Why ask me whether my friend Lloyd likes criticism? You've obviously got a bee in your bonnet over it. My advice is just, get over yourself. I don't mean to be funny, but that's it. You're getting third-hand information here, and now you're going on somebody else's channel and you're making accusations about somebody who I consider to be a really good friend. Trot on. Okay, so the next question is from Agent Suter, and Agent says, hi Craig, you mentioned 4 companies that you run. Which ones are they, and are they completely independent or do they overlap? Well, they're all independent in that they're all limited companies in their own right, but they all overlap as well. Put it this way, in our head office, all of the staff that we employ work across all of the companies. So, very briefly, because I'm sure people aren't going to find this too interesting. The first company is Non-Stop Kids Entertainment Limited, which is a children's entertainment company. I think we do about 18,000 events a year through that company, and there's about almost 100 entertainers that work pretty much exclusively for Non-Stop Kids. The second company is Slightly Unusual Limited. Slightly Unusual Limited is basically another entertainment agency, but instead of kids entertainment, it's corporates, it's weddings, it's close-up, illusion shows, cabaret, private parties, stuff like that, really more adult-themed entertainment. So that's Slightly Unusual. There's a big crossover there because you'll have people that inquire for Non-Stop Kids and then they'll get referred to Slightly Unusual and so on and so forth and back and forth. So those are those 2 companies. Then you have a company called Magic TV Limited, which was set up about 2 years ago now. And Magic TV Limited is just the company that deals with any products that I release or anything that happens with this YouTube channel or Netrix or anything like that. That all goes into Magic TV Limited because we like to keep it separate to anything else from a VAT point of view, if nothing else. So anything to do with lectures, anything to do with the Netrix, anything to do with products, anything to do with this YouTube channel, that goes through Magic TV Limited. And then the fourth company is not an official company, but it's one that we put a lot of effort into, and it's me as a brand. So me going out as a performer. I also am a motivational speaker, so I get booked an awful lot to go and speak to business owners about how to improve their business and how to get more leads, more referrals, mindset, coaching, things like that. And I actually do regular coaching with lots of different business owners as well. So me as a brand, whether it be me going out and performing magic, or whether it be me going out and sort of performing on stage, or whether it be me whatever it is, it's me is and underneath that banner you've also got Ryland as well, because since BGT, and he's been getting a lot of requests for bookings, really high profile bookings and so on and so forth. My team are managing all of those as well, so he doesn't have to. So that aspect of the company kind of looks after me and Ryland as a brand, and any inquiries and bookings that we get are dealt with through the office. So those are the four companies: Non-Stop Kids Entertainment, Slightly Unusual, Magic TV Limited, and me and Ryland as a brand going out and being booked either as a motivational speaker or a performer or whatever it may be. Okay, so the next question is from Peter Booth, and Peter says, can you do a Scott Alexander review show special? Absolutely. I think that's a really good idea, and 100% yes, I will do that. I never considered it before, but I mean, there's so many products that Scott has got, that he's bought out, that I think that we could shine a light on. So yes, I will add it to the list, and at some point I will do a Scott Alexander review show special. Okay, so the next question is from the Magic Classroom, and the Magic Classroom says, what's the best pie routine in your opinion? Pie as in P-I, not pie as in I ate all the pies. What's the best pie routine? Well, in all honesty, I've not really got much experience in routines with pie. I know Vincent Heddan had one that came out years ago, but I don't really know too much about that routine. The other one that I do, and I have done, and I would happily do at any point, is David Penn's Pie Revelations. Now, that is a really good routine. I love that routine. So I'd say Pie Revelations is the best one, but that's because I've got very limited experience of routines with pie. I do think that's very clever. I love the app integration with, the way that the routine all comes together. I think the book is really interesting, that fits in with it. I did a full review show special and a performance of it, so you can go and check that out if you go check out the review show special playlist. But I think I'd have to say Pie Revelations by David Penn. Okay, the Magic Classroom has another question, and the question is, how important do you think it is to demonstrate a real skill in a magic show? Like juggling, memorizing a deck, solving a cube, etc. There's a theory that it gives you more credibility if you do something that doesn't have a magical method. I don't know, really. I suppose it's down to the individual. I think it's down to the individual act. It's down to the individual person as opposed to anything else. I think that if you do that stuff, it can come across as very boring if you don't do it correctly. It's like, right, I'm going to memorize this deck of cards, but also, like, I remember the Fast Project by Daniel Dorian Johnson, and he's got a memorized deck routine on there where he does a pseudo memorization of the deck. And it's an incredible routine, and he has people on the edge of his seat, but that's because he's such a strong performer. You look at somebody like Tom Crosby, the performing nerd, his entire show is about doing nerdy stuff with Rubik's Cubes, memorized decks and stuff like that. So it can work, but I think it's really down to your character. Like, I don't think I could pull that sort of stuff off. I don't think I'd find it interesting. I do cube stuff, but I don't pretend like I'm actually solving a cube. I'm throwing the cube up in the air and solving it in like a second and stuff like that. Same with Ryland when he does his cube stuff. I think it's that, like, if Ryland went on BGT and went to the audience, went to the judges' table, handed them a cube, got them to mix it up, and then just solved it really quickly, I don't think that would be as good as anything else that he did. And I think that's because of his character and his performance. But I think it's the same for me. I don't think I'd get away with just standing there solving a cube. Now, could somebody get away with it? Absolutely. Same with juggling, same with memorizing a deck. I don't really want to say to an audience that I can memorize a deck of cards because I do so much stuff with a mem deck. I don't want to even give them the idea that it's possible that I memorize a deck of cards, because I think that takes away from some of the stuff that I might be doing later when I actually am using a memorized deck. But if you can get away with it, great. While we were in Blackpool, we went to see Michael Jordan's hijinks show. which I've seen several times in the past, and it's always brilliant. And he puts lots of juggling routines in there. There's routines where he's juggling and a card appears in a juggling club. There's routines where he's doing plate spinning with multiple plates at the same time. There's a whole bunch of different juggling stuff, unicycle stuff, and a whole bunch of different things that he's doing in that show that are juggling themed. And that works for Michael because he's got a circus background. It ain't going to work for me. It's not going to work for me. So I really think it's down to the individual. The way you framed the question was, do you think it's important to demonstrate a real skill in a magic show? No, not really. I think it's important to put across the best show that you can do. And if your performing character means that demonstrating a real skill makes the show better, like Tom Crosby, for example, then great, 100%, demonstrate a real skill. But if you don't do that, I don't think it makes it a bad show. I just think that, you've just structured the show differently. Okay, so the next question is from Stephen Blair. By the way, if you haven't checked out Stephen Blair's YouTube channel, please do so. It's very, very good. As a wrestling fan, as well, I personally think Chris Jericho is one of the best performers of all time. Yes, absolutely. He can grip an audience from the moment he walks out. He'll reinvent himself when he feels it's right by listening to the fans. You also have his band Fozzy, and having seen them live a dozen times, you can see the performer in Chris. My question is this: why should magicians watch Chris Jericho? How important is it to listen to the audience, reinvent yourself, and when do you know it's right? Great question, Stephen. Absolutely amazing question. Yeah, I mean, Chris Jericho is amazing. I'll never forget. Chris Jericho for those people who aren't wrestling fans, he comes and goes from wrestling. He'll be in wrestling, then he'll disappear for a few years, then he'll come back, then he'll disappear for a few years, then he'll come back, then he'll disappear, then he'll come back. And then he'll pop up in a different organization. He's currently in AEW. And when he pops away, he's doing TV, he's doing film, he's performing with his band Fozzy. He's just incredible. I think one of the big things about Chris, and one of the reasons he's had such longevity in his career, is because he has stepped away from wrestling for a while. We've all met those magicians that have burnout, that just perform day in, day out, and they get to a point where they're just like, you know what, I can't do this anymore, and they end up leaving and doing something else. Well, Chris regenerates, I think, his love of wrestling by stepping away from it. And I remember seeing an interview with him years ago, and he said, hey, I can never stop doing wrestling, but I can never stop doing the other stuff either. And I think because the fans know he's going to go away and then come back again, they hang on every match that he has, because they know that he's not probably going to be there forever. I fully expect at the end of his AEW run, he'll disappear, he'll do something else, and then I think he'll probably retire in WWE, and he'll come back to WWE for one more run before going into the Hall of Fame. I think that's just how Chris Jericho operates. But he has got that ability to reinvent himself, 100%. I remember that promo that he cut when he came back from one of his hiatuses. And he came out on stage, and the crowd loved him. And he came out and he teased them for 10 minutes and never said a word, and then walked to the back, and he kept that up again and again and again before eventually he was able to turn heel, which, if you don't watch wrestling, means he became a bad guy. He was able to turn heel by not saying a word and just pissing off the wrestling community. The stuff that he did with the list was incredible when he was working with Kevin Owen. You've just made the list. It was a complete, total different character to anything that he played before. His character in AEW, again, is completely different. You see people like that. I've talked about David Penn in the past on this channel, and he does have that ability to reinvent himself again and again and again. He was originally that stage illusionist, that slick guy, that David Copperfield sort of wannabe type character. And then as he got older, he moved away from that, and he kind of branded himself more as a close-up magician. And then he branded himself as a tech magician. And he's always kind of reinventing himself. And I think that's really important to do. I think it's really important to constantly look at what your audience is saying, and, don't get to a point where you're too old. I'm hyper aware of this. I really am. I've got a very physical style on stage, and Yeah, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm the sad old bloke that's going out on stage trying to do the same routines he did for years and not being able to pull them off anymore. And I will definitely step away from magic before that happens, or not step away from magic, but step away from that particular environment. I think that you do constantly have to listen to your audience. You have to reinvent yourself. But it's not just listening to your audience, it's looking at external situations as well. So again, going back to David Penn, he branded himself as the tech magician right at the very beginning when tech became really popular. Now he's built a real niche for himself as the tech magician. And tech's become really, really popular. It's kind of looking for trends as well and going, right, okay, what's going to become popular in the next few years? Let's jump on this right at the very beginning. So yeah, why should people why should people check out Chris Jericho? Well, A, it's entertaining as hell. He is one of the most electrifying men in sports entertainment. He's just a damn good wrestler, and he is the blueprint for what magicians should do when it comes to reinventing their own career as well. So yeah, good shout, Stephen. Chris Jericho is amazing. Okay, so the next question is from Divishan Rao, and Divishan has two questions. The first question is, do you know what's going on with Dynamo, because he's been inactive on all social media for over a year now and said nothing about it? No, not really. Sorry. I have no idea. I don't know. No idea. Sorry. I don't really know what to add about that. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's just taking a step back and he's busy and he's going to come out with a new TV show, a new special at some point. The old expression, it's always quiet before the storm. So maybe he's planning something big. A lot of the stuff that Dynamo does takes a lot of preparation and planning. So maybe he's creating stage shows and because that if he announces something new, everybody's going to be paying attention. Everyone's going to be listening because he's such an iconic figure in magic that when he makes an announcement, the media will jump all over it. But, just because he's not on social media doesn't mean he's not being busy. I mean, we don't know the gigs he's doing. There's a lot of people I know that have gigs every single day and they don't have a busy social media platform. He doesn't need to post on social media. Everybody knows who Dynamo is. I'm pretty much guarantee you if an entertainment agency called most of the big companies in the UK and says, hey, would you like Dynamo for your Christmas party? They're going to say, yeah. So he could be busy. We don't know. I've got no idea. But I'm sure he will resurface again soon like a phoenix. Okay, another one from Divishan Rao is, do you ever perform the mouth switch kissing card trick at gigs? I think you're talking about French Kiss by Wayne Houchin. And no, I don't. Nope, never performed it. Ever. I think it's one routine that I've never, ever, ever performed. I've got variations of it, but I've never actually performed French Kiss. And I've seen so many magicians do it in such a creepy way. I've seen a lot of old men get like 23-year-old girls to literally come up to them and kiss them. It's a trick that if you do it correctly, it can be incredible. But if you do it slightly incorrectly, it can come across as lewd and cheesy and really just a bit gross. And I've just taken the easy option and not bothered doing it. I think if I was going to do it, what I would do is I would do it for a bride and groom, or a man and woman, or a husband and wife, or a girlfriend and boyfriend, and I'd figure out a way of having 2 signed cards. Because obviously that's not the original method of French Kiss. The original method is, the reason you're doing it with the magician is because there's a pre-signed dupe, obviously. But I think I'd come up with a method of doing it where 2 signed cards are folded up and held in the lips of a man and a woman, and they do the switch themselves. So the magician's got nothing to do with it, I think, and put the focus on them. And, that gives you a reason to do the kiss. But, unless you're, performing to a bunch of single people and you look like Tom Mullinger or Tom Wright, I think that you're approaching dangerous territory. So I've never actually done this trick. and it's not one that I would ever do. Okay, so the next question is from Michael 1, and Michael 1 says, I couldn't help but notice that Matt is wearing what appears to be Joe Ryan Fleish's rubber bands on his wrist. Does he do any rubber band magic? No, I'm teaching him rubber band magic. I'm teaching him he wanted to learn a couple of simple tricks to do for bandmates, and so I've taught him a couple of simple tricks. I taught him the jumping rubber band, and I've taught him crazy man's handcuffs. And he has these bands on his wrist, and he's practicing it all of the time. He's sitting in front of his computer in the sales office because all of the sales team wear headsets, and he's just there talking to people, just doing crazy man's handcuffs over and over again. I've actually been debating doing some sort of documentary with Matt. I don't know whether to or not. Doing some sort of documentary where it's kind of like giving myself a few weeks to turn him into like a magician and actually send him to a gig. I think that would be amazing, and see if I can fool magicians into thinking that he's like a real magician, because he's a great performer, and I think he could pull it off, and I reckon I could teach it to him, and I think, that would make a really interesting video series for the channel. But I don't know whether to or not. I don't know whether to, going back to the other video, the other question, I don't know whether to rob him of his innocence. I don't know. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, the bands are on his wrist because he's practicing crazy man's handcuffs and jumping rubber band, and he's like a kid at Christmas. Every time he does it, he giggles. So that's why the bands are on his wrist. Well watched. Okay, so the next question is Mike Tyson by TKO, and Mike Tyson by TKO says, hey Craig, appreciate all you do for our community. Did you see Lloyd's version of Cognito Maximum decks with blank cards? Wow, yes I did. It was freaking amazing. So here's the big question. If there was a Magic and Mentalism Olympics between all the nations, best of the best, who takes gold, silver, and finally bronze? I think it's very much based on who you'd get to perform. There's people that are amazing, but they never like competing in competitions. Perfect example is FISM. There's people who would kill FISM, but they just don't enter. They just don't compete, which is fair enough. I really don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, America has some amazing magicians, but so does, a lot of the Far East has some amazing magicians, China and Hong Kong. I mean, you look at Hong Kong, you've got Bon Lee and Henry Harris just there, man. I mean, that tells you lots. But then you've got some incredible people in Canada and then in the UK. I don't know. Without actually seeing a lineup, I wouldn't have a clue. I mean, the closest thing we've got to the Olympics is FISM, and we know the results from FISM this year. I don't know. It's a great question, but I couldn't possibly answer it because it very much depends on the people from those countries that are competing. Now, if you gave me a list of people from each country, I could probably come up with an answer. But just saying which country would win, I've got no idea because there's so many incredible people in each country. It very much depends on which ones would come forward to do this hypothetical competition. Next question from David Blaine is, why aren't you responding to our comments? I am. I respond to your comments all the time, David Blaine, all of the time. You ask the same question 15 times on various different posts, and I'll answer it on 2 or 3 posts, and then you'll be rude to me, and you'll say something really rude, and it'll piss me off. And there's a question that you've asked about 7 times on the various different Q&As, and I answered it on a Q&A. And I've even linked to you which Q&A it's on, and you still ask which why aren't you answering our questions? I am answering your questions. It's not my fault that you aren't paying attention. I'm sick and tired of you commenting on various different videos, calling me out for crap I haven't done. I am answering your questions, but frankly, I'm getting to a point where I'm not going to answer anymore. So there you go, guys. That's another Q&A in the bag. Thank you once again for joining me right here on Magic TV. Hope you've enjoyed this Q&A. We'll be back into the studio for next week's Q&A, so everything should go back to normal. If you want to see more videos like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. And don't forget, please don't forget that you can, no idea what I'm talking about. Please don't forget that you can go and sign up to the Netrix. That's www.thenetrix.com. You can go sign up and see what the fuss is about. We've got some incredible content that's going to be dropping over the next few weeks. So go check that out. There's going to be some more names joining the Netrix soon as well. So let me know in the comments down below if you want a particular person joining the Netrix. I will see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you soon. My name's Craig from Magic TV.